which is salty, is tasty, is wonderful. You eat, you are going to gain true weight. The salt triggers mechanism by which you gain true weight. As a big side effect, if you look at the epidemiological studies, it's there. Now let's take what we need to take, normal salt. Now I think you mentioned, you heard 2200 milligrams. That's what the recommendation is. All of us, adults, should be taking no more than 2300 milligrams sodium per day, preferably less. Now that is sodium. Now, mathematics, how much salt is that? Sodium chloride.
6,000.
Pardon me?
Approximately 6,000
Approximately 6,000.
milligram.
It is. Multiply by 2.5, it comes to 6,000 milligrams precisely. So when you look at labels and tell you sodium, you multiply that with 2.5 and it will tell you that is the salt you are taking, which is what you are interested. And how much is that? 1 teaspoon. Not much. A glass of milk had 100 milligrams of sodium. A slice of bread has quite a bit of salt. It doesn't take much in a day to come to 2300 milligrams. If you start using pickles and samosas and all those, now you know your salt aggregation, total salt intake will exceed what we do normally today. Instead of 2300 milligrams, most Canadians take about 5,000. 4 to 5,000 milligrams of sodium multiplied by 2.5, 10 grams. That's a lot of salt. And we do it innocently. But it's hurting us. Now come to misconceptions about salt. I talked about sodium chloride, table salt. What are the misconceptions about salt, sea salt? I'm no expert or anything about that. Sea salt, what's the difference? Anybody?
Iodine.
Iodine, what else?
More potassium.
Potassium, what else? Come back to the basic point.
It doesn't have chloride.
Chloride.
Come back to the basic point, that is sodium chloride. How much sodium chloride does sea salt have? Same. Same as table salt. Plus, it has something else. Iodine, and you mentioned something else. So if you're taking sea salt with the understanding that it is better than the table salt, that's not true. Just keep that in mind. You take sea salt with a clear understanding that it is the same, plus I'm taking iodine, something else. That's fine. But you can't say that taking sea salt, I'm replacing the table salt. That's a misconception. Same goes for the Himalayan salt. Same thing goes, sodium, table salt is the same. Now come to the salt substitute. I went through the whole list of these. Please read it yourself. There are some good points, but there are many will hurt you. And I can tell you two personal examples. One of my patients with kidney problem was taking ammonium salt instead of sodium. It's ammonium. And his kidney functions were not getting better. Why? Because he was taking ammonium. And it doesn't go well. So we have to analyze this person, and finally we stopped it, and the things got better. So I would say read it carefully. Some have a lot of potassium, and that can hurt many people. Reading labels is a good idea, no doubt. Now you come to the misconception about water intake.
What about black salt?
I'm sorry, I didn't look at it, but tell me what it is.
Sulfur.
No, that I know, name. But what is in it?
Sulfur.
Sulfur?
Yeah.
Well, if it is sulfur, which the leaps Parak Sahib says, that's not good. I look at it, black salt, and report to this group next month. What is the actual composition of black salt?
What about Sendha Namak?
Pardon me?
Sendha Namak in India, in the drug food,
Black salt.
Sendha Namak in India. What is
And tell me what it is.
I don't know what it is, but what is
Give me, I'll look, trace it. I will look into that if you tell me the whole name, and I'll report back to you next month. Because by and large, I'm talking about by and large, please read it carefully. How much sodium chloride it has, and what is the substitute, and what are the salts which don't hurt you. Now, what is the myth about drinking water? Why do we have to drink 8 glasses of water every day? Tell me, how much water do we need?
3.7 liters.
How much?
3.7 kilograms.
You need that much water?
What? That's what I read.
Okay.
3.7 liters.
3.7 liters mean 3,700 milliliters.
3.7 kilo.
That's the same thing. Kilo is a liter. Let's come back to, that's the general recommendation, 8 glasses. Each glass is about 250 milliliters, comes to about 2 liters. So 8 glasses, it comes to about 2 liters.
No, I'm sorry, that includes 20% of the vegetables.
I'm coming back to that. Now tell me, how much water do you lose every day? That is the only amount that you need to replace. Calculate, think about how much water each one of us loses no matter what you do. Can anybody guess? How much we lose through the skin every day? How much do we lose when we talk? How much do we lose when we breathe? And you don't even know that. And there's a name for it. That's called insensible. You don't sense it. How much is it? 600 to 700 milliliters. About 2 glasses. Each glass I measure is about 250. So it's about 2 to 3 glasses, if you can say that. That you have to replace. Now, the other thing, you can't help it, you pee. You have to replace pee. There is no way. How much do we need to pee? Not what we do, We need not more than 500 milliliters. This is a myth. You have to produce 1.5 liters of urine. I don't know where it came from. You need only 500 milliliters of urine every day to get rid of the waste. So the total comes to about no more than 1.2 liters, or 4 glasses, 5 glasses. Where does the myth come for 8? And if you need water, your body will tell you you need water. We already talked about it. The moment your water level drops in the body, you become thirsty. The antidiuretic hormone is produced. So you, under normal circumstances, you don't go behind water. So 1.2 liters. What we do today, we drink 8 glasses of water, which is clear, nice, and when we look at our pee, it's also clear. So basically, we are wasting water. So we do what? Last month we had speaker. That's the only exception, that you have to drink lot more water if you are a stone farmer. Everybody doesn't make stone. There are people who are more prone to stone making, and they are the people who should be drinking more. Not everybody. Why do we develop swelling? That's the third part in the body. That won't take long. I already mentioned from the blood compartment, the water moves out into this space, marked with the letter B. This space, which already has about 4 liters of, or 14 liters of water, if you put more into it, it'll show up. Your feet are swollen, your face is swollen, and your tummy is swollen, and on and on. Why this water moves from this compartment to this, we already covered it. I'll summarize it. The extra water in the interstitial space, because you have more salt and more hydrostatic pressure is pushing the extra water out. Or you have less protein, it cannot sponge it and keep it inside. And the third one is the membrane separating the two compartments is leaking. Now how can it happen? Somebody is allergic to something. You saw that. If somebody develops allergic reaction to something, they swell up. That's the reason. Your membrane now is leaking. So that is the reason for swelling. By and large, for practical purposes, swelling means we have too much salt. The extra point that I have to cover, we still have 15 minutes. What does it mean? You have your blood test and you look at it. Sodium, they report to you it is less than 135. Normal is between 135 and 140. It varies lab to lab, but that's the general normal range between 135 to 140. Now supposing it is less than 135, 130, what does it mean? 125, 120. The lowest that I have seen is 108. with the 108 blood sodium, the patient is unconscious. Now you see the range. We have normal, person is alert. It drops down to 130, probably nothing happens. 125, 120, when it comes to 120, that is concerning. It's the speed with which it falls. If it takes 1 month, from 140, 130, 125, 120, takes a month. It's not bad. But today my sodium is 140 and tomorrow is 120. Trust me, I may be unconscious. So the speed with which sodium drops is very important. Now what happens? Why anybody will have low sodium? I think that most of the time people say, I'm losing sodium. Where can you lose sodium? Think for a moment. Where are the outlets in our body? There are only two. It's the gastrointestinal tract, up or down, or the kidney. There is no third outlet. Skin is a broader term. So either you are losing through vomiting and so on, and let me tell you, there is not too much sodium in what you vomit. Because in the stomach, it's the hydrochloric acid, which is HCl, not sodium chloride. So people are vomiting and nothing else, they are losing chloride, not sodium. But those people who have diarrhea, that's mostly salt. So that's one way your salt level can drop. And the second is the kidney. There are two situations where the salt wasting occurs through the kidneys. Most common is the water pill, so-called diuretic. People take it for blood pressure. And what it does, basically take the salt out. So your blood volume goes down, your blood pressure is under control. Now you can rationalize. Then there is another situation where kidney disease by itself will not keep the salt the way it should. So they lose salt through the kidney, not by design, by circumstances. So we have to watch it. Very little sodium you lose through the skin unless you're a football player or a hockey player. And if you are walking and swimming, you do lose some, but not much. Is there any other? Yes. That's very common. It's what we call is dilutional. There's no deficiency. Salt is the same, but you drank too much. Instead of 140, now it dropped to 135 or less. It happened 2 months ago. And I'm giving you a practical example. A person who I know dearly was given tablets of salt because the sodium was 125. You would say, well, what's wrong with it? That person developed the blood volume high, went into heart failure. And went into the Heart Institute. First thing they did, who asked you to take salt pills? So they stopped it. It's a month today. The sodium is back up to 140. The person is off the salt pill. And there is no failure, heart failure. I think this mistake is done repeatedly. Oh, my sodium is low, 125, let me take more salt. Think about before you do it. Unless you have gastrointestinal losses, vomiting not so much, diarrhea, or you in the water pill, or you have chronic kidney disease, known to lose salt, don't take salt. Now the third one is falsely low. Nothing to do with anything that we talked about. There's not too much water, has not lost, is falsely low. Does anybody know? Think of what can it be. Those who are diabetics should know it. If your blood sugar is very high, it's not controlled, and you try your best, but the blood sugar is totally out of control, you go and have your blood test. Your sodium will be 125. Don't start taking the pill, salt pill. You bring your blood sugar down, and the sodium will go up to 140. As soon as the sugar comes down, the sodium will go up. Now the same thing happens if your cholesterol is too high. Same thing. And exactly the same thing if your protein is too high. So these are falsely low situations where the sodium is showing low value, not that it is low. Now that is low salt. What about the high salt? Eating too much salt, will it ever make your sodium 150 instead of 140? Show me one example. Rarely this will ever happen. That you are eating too much salt and your sodium has gone up to 150. It was reporting it. It doesn't happen. But it happened once in children. Sumesh is sitting on the back there. He is a pediatrician. He can testify. In the nursery, instead of eating sugar, adding sugar, they added salt. And the babies cannot say anything. The salt level, sodium level went up to very high. And the children, the babies died. So, that's babies. Now you look at the adults. Can this happen to adults? Yes. If somebody is unconscious in the hospital at home, you put a nasogastric tube to feed that person, you know we can feed it. And what you give it to the person may contain too much salt, but the person is unconscious, cannot complain. The sodium can go up. But those are very uncommon situations. Most of the time, the reason is we don't have enough water. We must drink water. That's the reason why our high sodium in that situation is, because we do not have enough water. So this was extra that I was asked to cover. And we still have about 10 minutes, questions, answers. So I tried to cover physiology, its physiology, clinical application to daily health. I think it's useful for all of us. So I can entertain a few questions. Yes, go ahead. Sure.
If we go to washroom and excrete ourselves or urine, will that help lower down salt content?
Well, that's what we talked about. Adaptation is exactly that. Adaptation by the kidney is exactly that. Your pressure goes up in the body, and this is what we call it pressure diuresis. The kidney senses, and then it does not produce the hormone I told you, salt retaining hormone. So the kidney, 48 hours later, will throw all that extra you took it and back to normal. Yes,
What is the relationship to obesity?
obesity.
Yeah, do these values that you cited, same for obese as well as non-obese people?
Okay, this is for,
Proportionately.
okay, after that. This is for normal person. Because when you talk about obesity, we have to factor in. When we talk about 70 kilogram, we are talking about the ideal body weight. So if there is somebody is way overweight, so we have to figure it out. Is it due to muscles? Is it due to fat? It will complicate the point, and it's well pointed out, that sometimes those adjustment calculations can be difficult. Yes?
Just not following that why there is a 48 hours gap, because there is a cause and effect. I can drink water. Sometimes in the lab they say, can you drink some water and wait and go and urinate, give some sample. So is it water is going fast and the salt and other minerals take 48 hours to go out, or what is the why there is a
Water will not go without salt. Okay? If you look at the urine composition, there is no such a thing as water. It has to be with various salts, sodium, chloride, or on and on, urea, plus that's part of it. Go ahead. Yeah.
How does the low or high sodium affects the functioning of brain?
Okay.
Inducing sleep or something.
Okay, I explained to you the shifting of water. If your blood sodium is low, that is hypotonic. I pointed out. What is inside the cell is isotonic.
Right.
So where would the water go? It'll move from the low hypotonic part to the isotonic, because it has to maintain the three compartments isotonic, same level. So the water will shift from the blood compartment into the cell. And as these brain cells get water, they swell up. And patient goes into all kind of complications, convulsions, unconscious, and so on and so forth. Any other question, please?
Body swelling comes when the protein is low.
So two things. Most common, there is too much salt and water, the hydrostatic pressure is high, and it pushing through the compartment into the space. Same thing happens if you are in the plane. In the plane, you are sitting with your feet down. The circulation is dependent. So the whole thing pulls down into your legs, and the pressure builds up. And the water moves out. And your shoes, if you take your shoes off before you get into your seat, and then you reach Delhi, you can't put your shoes on. That's the explanation.
You mentioned about protein in the blood. Is it just the serum albumin you are talking about?
Yes. Purely serum albumin with a molecular weight of 68,000. That's precisely what it is. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I want to know about, you mentioned about Himalayan, it's a rock salt, it's
I
not
said,
sea salt.
I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
I said these are various salts. People say this table salt composition and the Himalayan salt composition in terms of sodium chloride is the same.
Yeah, but it's not the sea salt, Himalayan rock salt. It's coming from the rock. Himalayan, it's not the sea salt, it's a rock salt. Himalayan rock salt.
Look at it. Look at it. I mentioned that you read the label.